Hey guys, welcome to my podcast. I have Jackie. How do you say your last name?
Funes.
Funes from Jaxmorefun. So Jackie is a member of Sub 2, just like I am. She's been in it since you said April,
Mm-hmm.
and she's building her online presence. So we're gonna have her on here today, and we're just gonna talk about real estate and her journey. So yeah, I guess just to start things off, could you just tell me about yourself and how you got started in real estate?
Yeah, of course. And Jarod, I'm so excited to be here and talking with you today, just get to know you a little bit better. So my background, I grew up with the influence of my uncle. He owns his own demolition company, commercial demolition, and I worked with him for a couple of years. And just being around him, he was always the type of guy that would say, you should do what you like to do, but do it for yourself. And so that kind of led me into as soon as I turned 21, I started bartending. So my first job was actually working at IHOP, and I got into the server restaurant industry and went and scaled up to a fancy steakhouse. Became a bartender as soon as I could, and just fell in love with I was already really into the service industry and service side of things. I love talking with people and just getting to know people. But then you add alcohol to the mix and it's so much more fun. That's typically at, parties and things that's the people's most favorite person there is the bartender.
Yeah.
So I decided to open a mobile bartending business and started that May of 2019.
Oh, wow.
I had a couple of events that year, just doing networking and getting myself out there. 2020, I was super excited because I had a lot of things lined up. And then COVID happened, and that kind of pushed everything back and really changed how I was looking at things. To be honest with you, I drink a lot during quarantine to the point where coming out of quarantine, I really didn't want to be around alcohol anymore. That just wasn't my thing. I was like, this is kind of just not for me. I ended up finishing my events for that year, and that kind of solidified okay, I want to do something different. I ended up meeting my now fiance during quarantine though. So that's actually how we got to know each other, was we quarantined together.
Awesome.
And I ended up moving in with him at the end of 2020. I was living in Northern Virginia at the time, and then moved to Maryland, closer to the DC area. And when I moved there, I was like, okay, well, now I got to find, another job. And I debated going into the restaurant industry again, just because of the area that we were in. There was a lot of activity out there, but I was like, you know what? I just want to stay away. Let me figure something else out. Something I'd always done was babysitting. So that was something I'd always do on the side for extra cash. So I was like, okay, let me see if anyone needs, a nanny or something. Let me put it out there. Ended up finding a family that was 5 minutes away from my house. And the hours that they were looking for were perfect. The baby was 4 months old. And so most of the day he's sleeping. So it still gave me a lot of freedom to do other things that I wanted to work on. And it was actually during that time that I started watching more content around short-term rentals. And I ended up sharing with my partner about just what I was looking at, different influencers. People in the short-term rental space are very familiar with the names of Michael Elefante, the Carwells, Robuilt. They're definitely big in that short-term rental space. And Michael Elefante was one that really stuck out to me, the way that he was putting out his content. So I shared that with my fiance, and I was like, why aren't we doing this? We could easily do something like this. And so he kind of went down his own rabbit hole and signed up for Michael's mentorship at the time, which was one-on-one coaching. And he pretty much walked us through the whole process of finding the property, analyzing it for the STR numbers. He connected us with the realtor. So we were living in Maryland. The property that we ended up looking at was in Georgia. So connected us with someone out there that he had worked with. And yeah, we ended up purchasing the property. So my fiance, he had some history as a landlord. He had already had one unit that he had as a long-term rental. And then we had the house that we were living in. So then this was his third property, bought as a vacation rental.
Awesome.
And yeah, it was crazy because we bought it technically sight unseen. Like, I mean, the realtor was there and he would take videos and photos, but like we weren't physically there. So this was our first like virtual experience of like, I remember we flew into Georgia and we're driving to the house like, okay, like hopefully this is what it actually looked like, you know, getting the butterflies. And it ended up being a great experience for us. We got to the property and I remember my fiance was like, oh, okay, like this is better than I was expecting. Like, you know, you try to go into it thinking worst case scenario just to be prepared. But yeah, so that worked out. And, you know, having that one-on-one coaching was super beneficial in like just cutting our learning curve and really hand holding us, like setting up the property, setting up the automations. Like we still manage it ourselves to this day.
Oh,
And
really?
just being able to do that remotely is like something that is kind of a roadblock for a lot of people. And honestly, it's one of those things where like, I don't think we would be doing it had we not invested in that mentorship.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I meet a lot of people that hear that because I've also purchased 2 mentorships. And when I talk to people that are trying to learn and stuff, I bring up purchasing a mentorship to them because it helped
Mm-hmm.
me so much. And I'm part of one for flipping mobile homes, and I'm also part of one or that sub 2. And both of them
Nice.
have brought so much value, like more
Yeah.
than I can even explain. But all my friends and stuff think that it's all a scam and all this stuff. So you had really good experiences, correct?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and that was on my end. And it's funny because that short-term rental management was my first mentorship.
Mhm.
And it was great. It ended up working out well for us. It's funny because the cost of that one-on-one for just 1 year was about the same cost for sub 2. And it's insane. Like, so we went like, oh, this was good. And then to like, wow, this is
Yeah.
amazing. Like
Yeah.
Pace is incredible with the community that he's building. And like the fact that it's, you know, once you're in for life. And so that's really cool. My fiance, on the other hand, he had done some previous mentorships before the short-term rental one that definitely he felt like was a waste of money that he spent like 2x on.
Crazy.
And yeah, and honestly, I've talked with a lot of people that have had negative experiences with mentorships, and the biggest thing is the reason why it doesn't work well is because of the lack of community. And I think that's just us as like on a human level of needing that community and being able to talk with other people. Like when you're learning something new, it's scary. You can have all the information, but to actually implement these things is
Yeah.
really hard. But that's why like I'm really grateful for the short-term rental management because having that one-on-one time is definitely like you're moving the needle forward because you have that person like right on your phone, like on the other line of like, okay, what's the problem? What's the issue? Like, I'm going to get you through it. And yeah, so I'm just like, I'm super grateful for sub 2 because it's on a bigger scale than I've ever been a part of. And the fact that there's so many different avenues within it that, you know, people, there's like all different types of walks and of experience and what people are focusing on. And it's just cool to like, you could have any genuine curiosity about anything and find somebody that's like, doing that. So I
Yeah.
think that's really cool to have that.
Yeah, just like this. I mean, I just reached out to you, 2 hours ago for the first time. You're like, "Yeah, I'll hop on a podcast with you." I was like, "Okay, awesome." But
Yeah.
one thing I want to say, if like people are watching this, hopefully some people watch it. If you are looking to buy a mentorship, obviously Sub 2 is an amazing one. The other one that I'm part of is called the Mobile Home Formula. And what I did before purchasing was do research, figure out who's part of these groups, like get on their Facebook and see if I can find anyone that's posted about it. Reach out to them,
Mhm.
just make sure, like, hey, is this legit? Am I going to get scammed?
Yep.
Stuff like
Yep.
that before you do drop any money, especially a lot of money if they're expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's awesome. So you have the one Airbnb. Your fiance has a long-term rental. Do you have any other properties that you are holding right now?
So we now live in Florida. So we ended up putting the Maryland property up for rent, which was really cool. We were able to get a 3-year lease on that. So it's something we won't have to worry about for a couple of years. But right now, yeah, we downsized, moved in with my fiance's parents. Originally, we were actually trying to travel. So we have a camper van.
Oh, awesome.
And so we were planning to go all over the country and just travel. When we got to Florida, we started having issues with our van, which is fine. It's still under warranty. So we just took it to get taken care of. But being stuck in Florida, honestly, like moving here, I was so excited. I've always wanted to get out of the DC area. And so just being in Florida, like we were enjoying it, but being here and like stationary, I really do see how we came across sub 2 because of that.
Oh, really?
Just the different things that we were focusing on. I feel like if we had started our travels early, we wouldn't really had been looking for something else to do and could have missed that opportunity. But it's crazy because I even tell my fiance, I'm like, we were going to travel the country, just go and do it. Now we literally have contacts all over the country. Like we could go anywhere and meet up with somebody and like talk with them about things. And so that part of it is cool too. I think that, you know, traveling is still something we want to do. And ideally we're hoping to get our van back soon. But we set ourselves up in a really good way to continue what we were planning to do, but doing it better.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool how things in life happen and you think it's like a big like upset, like gosh dang it, why did this happen? And then a couple years down the road or 6 months down the road, whatever, you see like the positives to it. I had very
Exactly.
similar experiences. But yeah, that's awesome. So you said you have how many? Did you?
We have 3 rentals. Yeah.
Awesome. And then your short term. So where was that at again? I forgot what you said.
It's
Georgia.
in Blue Ridge. Yeah, Blue Ridge, Georgia.
And how does that do?
So it's an interesting. We got it operational. I want to say last year. It's funny because the years always get me messed up. I feel like we've had it for so much longer. But yeah, so we started it May 2022, and first full year it was interesting in the beginning because we kind of came right before summer. We didn't know what to expect. It did decently well. And then honestly, so where we're at, we're near mountains and we're near a lake. So I was like, oh, okay, like maybe, you know, I was expecting a busier summer season, to be honest. But our busy season was really more in the fall. And I think that's just because it's a cabin, you know, people are more like, oh, let's go travel to a cabin, like get more secluded, be in the woods, you know, whatever. So from like, I want to say end of August all the way through mid-January, we were completely booked, which was so exciting.
Yeah.
And just getting that experience. When we first started in May, and this goes for anyone starting a short-term rental, you really can't work out the kinks until you just go and do it. So we've definitely like had our headaches and different things pop up. But having a team of reliable cleaners, honestly, is the biggest thing that you need, because they're the ones that are communicating between the guests and between you and setting things up. And so our cleaner is amazing. I really like, I tell her all the time, I'm like, I couldn't do this without you. Like just having someone that I can trust, and, you know, she knows the area. She knows if anything ever happens, like she's got someone that we can call. It's not even us having to look for that person. Like she's already got it. So that's been cool. More recently, it has been slower. We definitely had a slow season. And I know like that market specifically is definitely very oversaturated. But I think it's one of those things, and we're already starting to see it. Like we've been getting more bookings and we're headed towards that busy season again. So that's good. But I do think that because the competition increased and there was a lot more options for people, it slowed bookings down significantly to a point where I noticed a lot of people trying to get rid of their cabins in that area. So I really do think it's one of those things where like the people that can just stick it out are going to do well in the long run. So that's kind of where I see that going.
Awesome. Have you reached out to any of those owners to see if they would do subject to, like if they bought them during the low interest rates?
I haven't, because most of them have not. They definitely overpaid for them, which is like we kind of overpaid for ours too. Like going through that process of finding the cabin, I think we put in like 4 or 5 different offers before we actually were able to win one, because there was so much competition. And yeah, so the prices definitely, yeah, it's kind of tricky out there.
Yeah, the Airbnb market's interesting. I have an Airbnb as well. I don't know if I told you that, but
Oh, nice. Where is it?
it's in Peoria, Illinois. So it's like a not a touristy town at all, but it's on a river, so it's got a beautiful view, and it's like kind of like a or not log cabin, but looks like a lodge or something like that. And it
Oh, that's cool.
books a lot. But it definitely slowed down this year, but we were able to raise the rents, the pricing. So we actually did better this year than we did last year, which is
Oh,
nice.
nice. That's
But I'm
awesome.
afraid it's gonna get super slow this winter just because I mean the economy is getting a little more depressed now than it was and
Yeah.
whatnot. So that's cool. Well, I'm happy to hear all that's been working out. And are you looking to get more Airbnbs? Is that what? Yeah. Well, I guess okay. Before I ask that question, what is like your primary focus overall with real?
Um, so right now we are focusing on just building our capital to put into expanding our portfolio. And it's interesting because I think in when we first joined Sub 2, our mentality was to focus on long-term rentals and just building our portfolio that way. And
Mhm.
I really do feel like the more that we're meeting more people, the more my eyes are open to like thinking bigger. So I'm definitely more leaning towards multifamily and acquiring that way because I do think that while acquiring single family and doing long-term rentals is definitely a great strategy, it's more of the long game. And ideally for my fiance and I, we'd like to just start having a family within the next year or two. And so trying to get to where we want to go, our ultimate goal is to acquire some land and then build our dream home on that. And we're actually trying to have 7 kids. That's like the goal.
That's a lot.
um, so, yeah. So like, we're like, okay, we're eager to get started. So I'm like, what's the fastest way I can get to my goal? It's not long-term rentals with single family homes.
Yeah.
And so just looking bigger. Also, it was funny because earlier, I think it was after I'd found Pace, I'd started seeing more Cody Sanchez content. And she talks about buying boring businesses. And
Mhm.
business is more my language. It's something I'm more comfortable and familiar with that I've actually been behind the scenes and been a part of. And I remember telling my fiance, I'm like, oh, this looks good. And he's like, do you really want to get like sidetracked into something else? And I'm like, you're right. Like there was just so much already going on. And then Pace comes out with Zero Down. And I'm like, okay, like this is for free. Like this is part of the mentorship. Like let me, start looking into this. So that's something I've been doing more recently. And I think that even just like I've heard such good things about mobile home parks and RV parks. And so that's kind of like where my interest is like, okay, like maybe we can get in somehow this way. It's super popular in Florida. I was hearing people talk about how mobile home parks, like people reserve their spots like a year in advance because they know how hard it is to get a spot. So I'm like, okay, there's something here. Yeah.
Everyone wants to be in Florida.
Yeah. So the business buying aspect of things is really interesting to me. We're also interested in, aside from just mobile home parks and RV parks, I think like wellness centers where they have like saunas and float tanks and different like kind of more gym oriented type. That would be interesting to look into. So I like what is possible with business. And I think a lot of people aren't in that mindset of acquiring businesses. So there's a lot less competition and the seller financing of it is a lot more common in business. So I'm
Interesting.
just, yeah. And it's funny because even before we moved from Maryland, we had a neighbor, super nice guy. He had a commercial cleaning company and he was telling us he's getting a lot older. And he was telling us how he tries to get his kids involved. He tries to get his like nieces and nephews. He's like, I just want to pass this to someone and nobody wants to do the work. And they're doing like, he has contracts already in place with like Chick-fil-A's and all this stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
now that I know what I know now, I'm like, okay, I'm definitely going to have to call him and like
Yeah.
figure something out. Cause he's coming to that point where he's like, what do I do now? And that's a lot of business owners.
Yeah. That makes
Yeah.
sense. I mean, it's so sad to see when like a parent has built such a big business and become very successful at it, and then the kids just don't want to do it. Like, I don't think the kids realize that what it took him to get where he is.
Yeah.
Um, my dad has a business. He's actually a taxidermist. Do
Oh,
you know
wow.
what that is?
No.
So, like, you go to Bass Pro or Cabela's, whatever, and there's like the stuffed animal on the wall.
Oh, huh.
So that's taxidermy. So he's like he takes the dead animal and like fills it up with its stuff.
That's
And now
cool.
he has that business, but that's not something that I want to be a part of. But, so I kind of sound hypocritical saying that, but I'm more into the real estate stuff. But it's
Yeah,
business is
and
good.
I think that's the thing too. Like it's hard, especially depending on like you never know what the relationship between the parent and the child is. I've gone to places where I can see the owner of the business is forcing their child to work there, and the child hates their life and they're like, why am I here? But from the parents' perspective, they're just trying to give them skills and like value. Like that's definitely getting to see how business is run from that aspect is very valuable. But when it's coming like it's all about perspective. So, most teen kids don't want to be hanging around their parents and then they're getting forced to do so. So now they have a bad taste and yeah, it's unfortunate. But I do think, that's opportunity for other people to come in because there are people that are like, hey, I see the value in this. Let me take over what you've already built and figure out a way how, you make it a win-win situation for everybody.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So, what was the biggest motivator to everything when you started the sub two mentorship or started a business? Was it personal freedom? Was it to be able to go and travel and do whatever you want to do? Is it to make $1 million? Like, what is your driving factor?
It's definitely the personal, like just having that personal freedom. I think that especially when I think about having kids, I've always said that I don't want to have kids until I'm ready to have kids. And what I mean by that is I just want to be able to be 100% focused on them because I think it's really hard, especially in like today's economy. Most people have kids and they can't really be there for all the things because they have to keep working. So their kids are in daycare or, they spend like 8 hours a day at school and like I want to be able to have 100% focus on my kids and to empower them to do whatever it is that they want to do. Because I think that kids are so incredible of having that pure intentions of like they're genuinely curious of the world and
Mhm.
they have no like prior beliefs of what they can or cannot do. Like we as the adults are the ones that empower them to be like, hey, try anything and everything because you're going to find what you want to do and go and excel in that.
Yeah,
So to be able to provide that for my kids is like, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to like, oh, you want to go do this? Go ahead. Like we can do that. We're all going to go as a family. We're all going to support. And like, I want to be able to homeschool and just really just have, I feel like being more intentional about the relationships that we have is something that's hard to do in society. I think we get caught up in like what we're supposed to think and what things are supposed to look like. So really to just like live life unplugged, that's what I want to do.
yeah, that's awesome. That's a good goal to have.
Yeah.
A very selfless goal too. Um, so I'll just go through the last few questions I have here, and then we'll move on. But what's the most important lesson that you've learned from taking the action?
Definitely just being okay with falling forward or failing forward, really. I think that a lot of times we kind of get stuck in our head of like, we don't want to look a certain way or we're worried about what other people think. And you really can't learn unless you mess things up. So
Yeah,
just trying things out and putting yourself out there. Yeah, it's uncomfortable and yeah, you might feel stupid, but it's like it's something that you're going to be able to look back on like, oh, I went through this to get to where I am today.
100%. Did you
Yeah.
have like a big support system when you started this, or did you have like friends and stuff saying that's not going to work? Like that's a pie in the
So
sky sort of dream.
it's funny because I told you about my like previous background.
Hmm.
Honestly, I feel like my friends have always been very supportive. They definitely are like, "Oh my gosh, you go after it, you do what you do, like, you're willing to take chances." I admire that. So that on my friend end, that's really supportive. more so, but it's funny because more so on the family side, it's a little less supportive.
Yeah.
And I come from a Hispanic family where it's very common for people to make fun of each other and kind of bring each other down. Like, it sounds bad when you say it, but like that's genuinely what they're doing. And it's out of love, right? Because it's like they see you as this type of person, and if you try to be anything different, they're quick to judge and be like that's not you, that's not what. And so I've learned that through my journey of like, you know what, I need to be a little more quiet about what I'm doing and just focus on what I'm doing, because I don't need the negativity of like, that's not you, that's not, because I create my life, and whatever I want to do, I could wake up tomorrow and, be whoever I want to be. That's up to me. So that's definitely, yeah, definitely something I've been more careful about what I share with who.
Yeah, definitely. I have the same thoughts. I have actually still a lot of friends that think I'm just crazy. They're like, Jared, you just kind of do what you do, and like they think I'm an idiot half the time, but they also have no idea. They never ask me about business. They don't know how much stuff I own or anything.
Mhm.
It's kind of unfortunate because they're like my really good friends, but I just feel like I'm slowly growing apart from them.
Mm,
But in the
yeah.
process, you gain more friends that are doing the same thing, and then you get way closer with them, and like everyone's pursuing a better life, and
Yes.
just
That's how I feel about sub 2 is like
yeah,
I'm literally making my best friends. Like I can tell, like it's like these are the people that I'm talking with almost on a daily basis, genuinely checking in on each other. I mean, we're part of like a morning mindset group that meets twice a week. We get together at 5:30 in the morning, just at like Mondays and Thursdays. Mondays to set our intentions together, Thursdays to check in and make sure we finish the week strong. And like having that is, I get chills even thinking about it, because it's like, you hear all the time, like you are who you hang around.
yep,
And like, so it's important to invest in those relationships. So yeah, I'm kind of at a point, especially with me moving, it was a lot easier to be like, okay, like kind of starting from scratch.
yeah, awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
My next questions basically we already answered. So I guess thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome. Super happy to learn more about you and kind of hear where your journey's taken you.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add or?
I appreciate you, Jared. I think it's so cool that you reached out to me. And that's what life is all about. It really is just like, you never know unless you ask. I always say that the experience is better than the curiosity. And so that's how I try to live my life, is like, I'm going to try out anything and everything, because I'd rather be like, oh, that didn't work out or that did, as opposed to being like, oh, well, what if?
Yeah.
And yeah, last thing I'll leave you with is just I'm definitely working on building my presence, and while it's uncomfortable, I appreciate it, because it's like I know things are gonna come my way just because I put myself out there. So yeah, anyone that wants to follow me, I'm on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and it's all at Jaxmorefun, which is cool. I'll give you a little like the backstory of my name. So growing up, everyone would like friends would always call me like whatever, Jax, Jack, Jackson, Jay Quellen. I've heard it all. But Jax was kind of what always like my family and friends would call me. The more actually comes from my fiance. So his last name is Moreno. So that's my future last name. And then the fun comes from Funes. So Jack's more fun.
Awesome. I
Yeah.
never would have known that. Just
I
thought you were a fun
know.
person.
I try to be that too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on here. And yeah, I look forward to staying in touch and hopefully doing some business together.
Awesome, Jared. Thanks.
Yep. All right. How do you end this thing?
Same way you started it, you can
Oh,
end
I'm
it.
in full screen. That's why. Okay.